Hey, Don.
Hey, Randy. How you doing this morning, man?
Doing good. What's happening?
Oh, good. Well, not a whole lot. It's nice to finally interview somebody that's in the same time zone, though. You know what I mean? I tell you.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Sometimes I do a lot of interviews with like European acts, and they're like, "Oh, can we talk like 9 p.m. my time?" And I was like, "I'm so tired of doing math." It's like, okay, 11:30 is 11:30. Okay, I've got this.
Yeah, very good. I get you.
Well, thank you so much for being on my little podcast show here, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Well, so it's been a little while since we talked. The last time we talked, you got Zebra 4 was coming out.
Yeah.
So kind of fill in the blanks a little bit for me, man, because one of the things I noticed about you, which is part of one of the things I love also in some of my favorite artists, is that you keep a pretty low profile when it comes to like social media and things like that. You know what I mean? Like, so you're not like all up in my face. I don't know, like when you're eating a hamburger or like whatever.
Right.
So well, like what's been going on like since the last time we talked that's been super exciting for you?
Just the fact that I'm still playing music at this point is super exciting. It's been, how long? It's been since 2003. 17 years and since the last record.
Wow.
And, I've been doing some writing and stuff, but not an exorbitant amount. I mean, I've been just, enjoying performing live, grandfather now, and, enjoying the family and just trying to lay back and enjoy life, and let the anything that's creative just flow out, on its own.
Gosh, you got to be one of the coolest grandfathers I know.
I'm cool now with the babies really young,
That is so funny. And actually, that's so funny. Now that you tell me when Zebra 4 came out, I totally stand corrected, because gosh, when we talked, it was like 2000 and maybe 11 or so. So that album had already been out for a while. So but now that I remember is you guys were doing a series of shows is what it was. It's like you guys had gotten back together. You guys were doing some shows up in New York. And I was kind of wondering if you guys were going to do a tour. And that was around the time the hurricane was hitting you guys up there pretty hard, too.
Oh, okay. Right. Up here in New York.
Yeah, up there in New York. And so that was the thing about, I wanted to kind of go back to that a little bit, because that really was such a spectacular record.
Thanks.
Was there, like it was funny, I was telling my friend, my buddy was like, how come Zebra has only made 4 albums? They've been out for I said, they're kind of like Boston, man, like they make like an album like it seemed like they hit it hard for the first 3 years, then we waited like 20 years to get 4, you know what I mean, or something like that.
Right.
But like, was there like a desire to go out when that album came out at any point to like say like, let's just go do a tour, or is it just that at this point it's just like not really feasible or something like,
No, I think that the desire to do like a tour has been there, and it's just that the three of us are, we're all involved in different things, and just coordinating a certain time period for everybody to, focus on a quote unquote tour has been kind of tough. Although lately, we've gone out, like we went out to California for the first time in 30 years in February. And, we had some really good shows out there. We sold out in L.A. and Las Vegas, and we were encouraged by that. So I think we're looking to get back out and maybe do Seattle and Portland and San Francisco in the near future. We got a show coming up in Chicago and at the end of August, near Chicago anyway. And so we'd like to get out, and a lot of what was keeping us from actually going on the road is not in the way anymore. So I think it's possible we could do a quote unquote tour.
And touring's not like it used to be either. You know what I mean? Used to be like, hey, here's a bus. You guys go out on the road. Now it's like schlepping it in a van or something,
the van thing, and certainly the bus thing. I never was much of a bus person, but most of the shows we do now will fly in and then rent a couple of cars and do the dates in the area and then fly back.
Right.
But it would be cool to go out and just be able to stay out for a little while, or maybe do a couple of months.
Oh gosh, I can tell you. I mean, I like I said, I haven't. Last time I think I saw Zebra was in '87 when I was still living in New Orleans. So I was, because I grew up in Metairie, and that was the last time I saw you live in general. And so I'm like, I think I'm fought long due a Zebra show.
Yeah. It's over 30 years, so.
I'm telling you now, so do you guys ever get, how frequently do you get back to New Orleans as far as, doing, shows in and around that area, if you do at all?
Yeah, we're back there quite often, I know I'm down there at least 6 times a year doing, either Zebra or solo acoustic stuff. And we're going to be going down there in 2 weeks. We got a couple of shows we're doing down there on April 20th. April 20th we're in Homa, and then on May 19th we're in Slidell.
Oh wow! Yeah,
at a festival. So we're still playing, and actually been playing more the last 12 months than we have in probably over 10 years.
Right. Yeah, and I'd love you guys to make it to Atlanta. When was the last time you even played Atlanta? Do you remember?
Zebra. Yeah. I can't remember. It's been a long time.
It had to be a while because I moved here when I was in high school in '89, I think, and I definitely know you guys didn't play in the '90s. I don't think.
It had to be probably '86.
Right.
I'm going to guess '86, '85, something like that.
Around the time I saw you guys in New Orleans, Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so like I said, I was born in New Orleans. I grew up a Zebra fan. There used to be a joke that used to go around in my school that, when if you were born in the 70s, you were pretty much given a birth certificate and a copy of the debut album, because everyone I knew had that album, and that album, again, not to musically compare it to Boston, but that album was kind of like the equivalence to that debut Boston album, at least in New Orleans and the Southeast, where every song on that album was played on the radio, regardless of whether it was a single or not. We
had a lot of success with that record.
Yeah, so when you look back on that record, was that something that you expected, or was that just it just happened?
No, you don't expect anything. I think we knew we were going to sell a certain amount of copies when it first came out, because we had a pretty big fan base that had been waiting for the record. We've been performing together for 8 years at that point.
Yeah.
But then once the airplay and the MTV started kicking in, and we started selling the records in places outside of New Orleans and New York, that's where we, it started to take on a life of its own, and everything from there was pretty much a surprise. You can't expect, you hope, but you really don't know. So we were very happy with it.
Yeah, because you guys formed in, I think it was, please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm guessing 75. Was it 75 that you guys?
Yeah, that's when we started performing in February of 75.
Okay, yeah, because I was born in 73, and then I actually remember when I first got into you guys, my mom and dad both being like, "So Zebra," and I was like, "You guys like Zebra, y'all? The squarest people I know." You know what I mean? And my dad was just "Oh no, everybody knew about Zebra in the 70s in New Orleans."
That's funny.
But So what was it that, I mean, because that's a long time, man, from 75 to 83, you know, to putting out an album.
Yeah, we were ready. I mean, we were writing, we had all the material, and we were looking for a record deal, but the record, every time we could get a record company to listen to it, a lot of the feedback would be, well, it's kind of dated. If they came out 10 years ago, it was like, it was just really weird. We just didn't fit the time period, whenever they'd be listening, late 70s and stuff. And, I couldn't tell you why, or because it was so funny when Atlantic finally signed us. They had pretty much the same demo that we had 2 years before, when they said, we were dated, and now all of a sudden it's original and it's a fresh and it's great and it's blah blah blah, But at that point we'd been getting airplay on a radio station in New York, and we were in regular rotation with like five of the songs from the demo, and they were like top requested songs at the station. And so I think that had more to do with it than anything else. They
Right.
just saw the numbers of people that were tuning in and requesting, and decided to give it a shot.
Well, so, I'm trying to even wrap my head around this, because, like I said, I was so young at the time, in New Orleans. By the time I was getting into music, in New Orleans, it was, heavily, rooted in, the metal scene, where you had bands like, Lillian Axe and, all the, Razor White, all those bands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What was the New Orleans scene? I mean, the only thing I could think of is the Radiators, but, what was the New Orleans scene like around that time when you guys were coming up? Because when I listen to that album, especially that debut, I'm like, there's no way in hell any other band in New Orleans sounded like that. do you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. I think most of the band, the two bands you're referring to, Lillian Axe and Razor White, were heavier.
Yeah.
Definitely had a heavier edge to them, and we. When we started off, there were bands like the Paper Steamboat, Thunderhead, who had been signed. They were being produced by Johnny Winter at the time, and these were bands that we used to go see when we were kids.
Right.
And there was the Pot Liquor from Baton Rouge. We used to see them open up for lots of bands down at the Warehouse and at City Park Stadium. And so it was more of blues-based rock, which was what, we were more about, But I think it was just because all our influences were pretty much the same. By the time, Lillian Axe and Razor White and all these groups came out, the music scene had kind of shifted, and it was a little heavier. When we came out, when we were just practicing, it was 1974.
Right.
And I think, our influences were much more like Moody Blues, Yes, with the Zeppelin thrown in. And that was about as heavy as we got,
Yeah, because that's what I always, because I was always trying to picture, because like I said, like in the 80s, the scene was very, synonymous with the more heavy metal, hard rock thing. And of course, knowing that Zebra had come up kind of more in the 70s, you guys were the only band that I even remember that I even knew existed from that era in New Orleans. I'd never really heard of any other
Well, there were bands. There was a band called Mink that was out before Zebra was, that did. They did material that was pretty similar to what we did. We played a lot of the same stuff. Then there was another band called Star that was really big at the time, and there was a scene, but it shifted. And we just happened to still be together. A lot of those bands broke up in that time period between 1975 and 1980. So when our first record came out, a lot of kids, were, finding out about us for the first time, and not knowing, the history of the band. So
right, yeah, because I know when I bought that album, when I got that album, it was 85 or so, and I just remember thinking this is Rush meets Zeppelin meets like whatever, you know what I mean? Like it just like it didn't even dawn on me to think that you guys had been around that long. Like it sounded so like, I mean, especially when you think about the music that Rush was putting out around 83, 84, 85, like it seemed to fit like right in there like a little puzzle piece, whereas like when I look back on it now, I was like, God, those poor guys were at it for like 10 years or so before they even got to make an album.
The poor guys. I mean, the thing was, we were really, really successful on a local level, like I said, between New Orleans and New York, and I'd kind of just given up on the idea that we were ever going to get a record deal. I mean, I'd heard every excuse for not signing us that there possibly was, and so we were, I bought a house down in Slidell, and my wife and I were moved in there, and we were just ready to kind of settle down and just do what we had been doing, just play in the two areas and maybe expand it a little bit. But then all of a sudden the record deal came out of nowhere. We weren't even expecting it, or nobody was even shopping it at that point.
Right.
Just on a crazy fluke, conversation between a guy up here named Bob Buckman, who was the program director at a station called WVAB, and an intern at Atlantic Records that happened to be visiting there. He got the ear of the president and of the label, after he had talked to Buckman, and next thing you know, we had a deal. So pretty interesting.
So, I mean, to me, like, it's always been one of my favorite stories of a band, you know what I mean? Because it's like, so many, I mean, even the band that I've been in, right now, like, we've been together, it'll be like 5 years coming up, and we don't have delusions of grandeur or ever getting signed or anything like that, though, but, like, especially back in the day, like, that was something for a band to just be able to just say, like, it's worth it to just stick together because we like playing with each other and we like making music. So whether or not we get signed, we're just happy to just do this. So with that attitude, like did that attitude carry over for you guys, which I'm assuming it did, like going into like, No Telling Lies and 3.5 and things like that, like did you always kind of maintain that same attitude, whereas like, regardless, we're just going to play music when we want to and how we want to and enjoy it?
I think so, yeah. I mean, look, having a big fan base definitely helps. I don't know that we would have stayed together if we hadn't been successful enough to make a living doing it, but we were fortunate enough to do it without a record deal,
Right.
And I don't know how much longer it would have lasted if we hadn't gotten the record. Hindsight 2020, I'm not sure, but it's not, the point is hindsight's not 2020. I have no idea.
No, it's not. Exactly. Yeah. I learned that a long time ago.
Yeah. And, so, but I do think that we wanted to we played, we enjoyed doing it the way we wanted to do it and play the music we wanted to, and I don't think we would have done it any other way.
Right.
It's all about the music. I mean, there's a lot of ways to make a living, and you certainly don't, if you don't have to do something you don't want to do, then you should, I don't know if I would be playing music if I was told I had to play certain music or not do certain things. So,
right.
I just feel fortunate that I'm able to play the stuff that I do enjoy and can skip the rest.
Oh yeah, and another one I wanted to talk to you about, because I mean, like, so you're talking from like 75 to 83, before the first album came out. How much material, like, how much material bled over into No Telling Lies and 3.5 from that era? I mean, because in my mind, I'm thinking like, wow, that's like, I mean, I know for me, like in the past 10 years, like I've got enough material for my band to make like 2 records. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like,
yeah.
So was all of that material brought over, or was there like actually like newer material written for each of those records where like some of the songs were pulled from like older days, if that makes sense?
Right. The second record you know, the problem with the first record is that we had that 8 years to write, and we picked the best songs that we had, you know,
right.
Mainly for the first record, and that Jack Douglas, who was producing it, thought we had. But we had other songs that didn't get on the record, and one of them was Bears, and the other one was Wait Till the Summer's Gone. And
right.
Those went on the second record. The only song that I wrote from scratch, you know, between the time of the first record and the second record was Lullaby.
Okay.
Yeah, but the other songs, there was what else? There was I think the last song on the record on No Telling Lies might have been something that we did too. Drive Me Crazy. Yeah, Drive Me Crazy. We had been playing that, but most of the other material were pieces of songs that I had just never put together. You know, they weren't like full songs.
Right.
They were stuff that was written, you know, in that time period, and I was kind of caught off guard. Well, how quick, you know, they wanted another record, and what we really had to do to get it together. You know, so then I made it a point, you know, after the second record, was that I was going to write, you know, every day, and that's what I did. You know, I wrote, you know, every day while we were on the road. I would be writing, and so for the third album, I think the only song on the third album that is that came previous to the first album was Hard Living Without You.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that everything then was pretty current then. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very current. It was all written between 84 and 85. I wrote all that, the third album all at once, you know.
So, because what I love about that, because, you know, actually, you know, 3.5 is one of my favorite albums, because
Thanks.
One of the things I loved about it was it's still consistent, though, but, like, listening to the songs, you can totally tell that there was, like, not a modernness to it, but, like, oh, wow, like I could tell that they were written, like, especially listening to them now as a grown person, that, like, there's a significant amount of growth in the songwriting between, you know, from most of 3.5 to, like, the first album. Do you know what I mean? And so, you know, so that's a cool observation, though, but as a songwriter, that must have been a little challenging for you, though, too, to be like, okay, I've got to do something new. Do you know what I mean?
Well, you know, we didn't, you know, there were still a lot of songs that we hadn't used, but they just weren't good.
Right.
You know, I mean, there was 100 songs that we could have put on the third album without me having written anything, but we'd already rejected them for the first two. Why would I want to just put those back on, you know? So, I needed to write new material. So I think I came up with probably about 35 songs for the third record, and then and then the three of us went through them and, you know, and picked the ones that we wanted to put on, you know.
Right.
And that's how that came about, you know. But I'm glad I did it. I love 3.5. For me, it's the most consistent, you know. From song to song, it works more as an album for me than any of the others.
See, and that's what I was actually just going to say, was because, like I said, when I got into you guys, it was around 85, so 3.5 hadn't come out yet, and so of course, you get the first one, and then you get No Telling Lies, and then 3.5 comes out, and even listening to it now, 3.5 is the album that I of course, I find myself song for song going back to the first album, because it's more of a it's more of a nostalgic feel for me, you know. But musically, 3.5 to me was where it was just like, it all just seemed to, like, come together, you know.
Yeah.
So
I thought so too.
Yeah. So at what point and why did you guys just make that shift from New Orleans to New York and just being pretty much being a New York band?
Well, that was in 1977.
Yeah.
And that, like I was mentioning before, that there were a couple of bands in Louisiana that we'd grown up seeing, Thunderhead and, Pot Liquor. And we had seen them, kind of get really big in the area and then kind of fall, not be as popular.
Right.
And I think the thing that I noticed was that they were always around. They were always playing. And so we figured, at the very least, we need to get out of here, give it a rest.
Yeah.
So, and another thing was, we weren't having any luck finding anybody from a record company that would come to New Orleans to see a rock band.
Right.
We didn't have any connections, so we figured let's either go to L.A. or New York, and we knew some people in New York, and that we made some phone calls and had a guy from New York fly down to see us play, and he got us a couple of gigs, and that's the short story, and that's how we got to New York and why.
And you're probably a lot less likely. You could probably be less broke in New York than you could be in L.A. You know what I
mean? We'll never know.
That's so funny because I've heard people say like, oh God, L.A., New York, like where would we be less broke? You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
And what would be easier to get home? Like if you're in the Southeast, like New York's probably your best shot. So like let's go there. But well, so what? I did have a couple of like song questions to ask you because being a songwriter myself, like I'm always fascinated in just by the just the underlying inspiration behind certain songs, and especially like Who's Behind the Door, Bears. There's definitely some sort of a like an animal tie-in to it, I don't know how else to even say it though, so I'm just gonna let you tell me. But like, what was it behind those songs? Because when you listen to the lyrics to Bears, like I definitely get that, like, find a place in your heart for them and things like that. Like
yeah,
like what was it? What was it for you?
It's really it's an anti-hunting song,
right?
But without just throwing it right in your face, I grew up, my grandparents had a farm, and my grandfather raised cattle. Now he didn't slaughter the cattle on the farm, but we all knew where they were going, and I think, we would go fishing. He had a lot of places to fish up there in Texas, and my cousins would hunt, and it just. As I grew older, when I got into my teens, I think I just kind of looked at it as I had a little more empathy for the animals. It was getting kind of obvious to me that you were ending their lives, their consciousness, whatever that was, and using, we're bigger, we're stronger, or the Bible says they're here for us, as an excuse.
Right.
And I got kind of tired of it, and so I started writing about it in the songs, And Bears was the example.
Yeah, Bears was definitely one that stood out, and and obviously Who's Behind the Door, that was like, again, like I know I always joke around about it with the first album and being born with it, but like that was like obviously the first song I ever heard by you guys on the radio, and I just remember thinking like, what like an amazing song. But then I saw the video, and the video really kind of has some foresight to it as far as like, like where we were going to go with technology and stuff. Like, so so even though I know you probably didn't have a whole lot to do with the concept of the video, you guys have always been kind of rooted in technology as far as like making music and being, interested in, different, kinds of synth instruments and everything. So, but watching technology grow and everything, did that have anything to do with that song at all, or?
Well, I mean, the song, I think if I had to pick one source of inspiration, I'd say it was the movie 2001, Space Odyssey, And of course that movie's full of technology. At the time it was made, it was predicting what it would be like, whatever it was 40 years later. But I think for the song it was more a spiritual inspiration that I got from the movie. and just kind of the agnostic, not really knowing, the answers to why we're here and how we're here, and all that stuff, which I think were raised pretty well in 2001. Although when you look back at it now, it's a slow movie, but but it definitely had a big influence on me. So I think I kind of took the same approach with Who's Behind the Door, as to not, an agnostic look. I don't have the answers, but I certainly have some questions, and I framed them in a way that maybe would make people think more about them.
See, and that's a really cool way to look at it, because growing up in New Orleans, you're pretty much, I used to say you're the Catholic or you're not, is what it seemed like, and so I spent a lot of time in Catholic school, and you're kind of taught a certain way and things, and then you get older, and then at least I was. I grew up into luckily with a mother and father who were basically like, if you're going to question it. Don't feel like you have to go a certain way, And like for some reason, that song always it always brought me back to that song, in the sense that, there was a sense of like wonder to it, And so I always loved that you captured that, that, like, I think that was really, and for the time too, that, that it could still be embraced as kind of like a nice song on the radio and everything, but that, like, if people really read deep into it, probably wouldn't have got into it so much, you know what I mean?
Yeah, who knows, but that was the whole point of how it was written. It was to invite people in and then let them realize what it was about, as opposed to, throwing something up in your face,
Right.
Which I think a lot of people do. They might even put it in the title, but it was subtle. The title's subtle, and I think most of the the lyrics are, in some ways ambiguous enough to give people room to think for themselves.
So you were talking about, obviously you said there's like hundreds of songs, I'm sure, out there, that you guys have done or that you've written, has there, with the strong cult following that Zebra has there ever been any interest on your part to just say, oh, you know what, it'd be fun to put out a collection of demos and outtakes that never made the albums?
Well, fun is a, dangerous word, and I'm sure people would be interested in it, to hear what it was, but and maybe when I'm gone, all that stuff will come out, but for me as an artist, I don't want to just throw stuff out there just for the sake of throwing it out there. I used to complain about bands that I thought were trying to be, let's say, progressive for the sake of being progressive, instead of really writing something that meant something. Let's just show how fast we can play on every freaking song, or how many time changes we can do.
Right.
But without any meaning. All that stuff is good, but it's just like writing any other songs. You need a good song. It needs to work. I listened to, for instance, Close to the Edge. Brilliant. That whole song is it's perfect. It's a great example of great musicianship and awesome writing.
Right.
But then, I could show you 30 other bands that, are just as proficient, and tried to do similar stuff and fail because the songs weren't there. So,
right.
So for me, it's really about it being good stuff, and I don't need to just throw the stuff out there. Although, I'm always tempted to just say, oh, let it all out. And I'm sure, one day it will be, when I don't have any control over it anymore. But I think for now, I'd rather just put the stuff out there that means stuff. Like you said, you think who's behind the door, you go back to that. If it means something to you, you don't want to have it, shaded by some, crap that the guy wrote and didn't put out, And, there's a lot of it. There's piles of crap.
It's funny because I can attest to that because even just, I've been a songwriter. I've been writing songs for like 25 years, and there's songs that I would never let see the light of day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so I can, but I think from a fan's perspective, like, we look at the bands that we love. Like I look at Zebra or I look at Iron Maiden and I look at Kiss or whatever, and I think like, my God, I would die to hear the songs that never made the albums. And then you hear them say stuff like, no, you would die if you heard it. Like, that's why it didn't make the record. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're like, we don't want you guys to hear that stuff because we want you guys to hear the stuff that we're proud of, not the stuff that we felt like was too shitty to make a record.
Exactly. So, getting back to the point that I don't have to play songs, or music. I feel fortunate that I can play music that I like. If for instance, I put this stuff out, and one of them becomes a huge hit, and I hate it. What could be more of a hellish scenario than to be asked to play that song that you never liked to begin with over and over again because it just happened to be like one of the most popular songs you did.
It's almost like an artist's nightmare. It really, I really think about it, it is. Like, I can think about it because, like, if I think about, like, what my least favorite song that I've written is, like, if my band played it, all of a sudden everybody was like, that's the song we want to hear. I'd be like, but there's, like, there's, like, 30 other good ones. Like, why that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's it could happen. You never know. So there's always that danger.
But that's kind of cool because you actually really shed a whole new light on that for me on a personal level because, like, I never thought about it like that because I guess it also kind of shows in some way this, the selfishness sometimes of being the fan of a band is that, like, especially if you're like me where like, like when I fall in love with a band, like, I want the bootlegs, I want the demos, I want the everything. Do you know what I mean? And like, I don't think about it sometimes, or I don't think we as fans sometimes think about it from the artist's standpoint that like, there's a reason why we haven't heard these songs. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I look at some bands from the past, and there's certain bands that well, I think most people they have a time period of music that they love their bands, and then they say, I didn't like that so much, but the bands, maybe some of their biggest hits came from that time period,
Right.
I know that if I was, if I had to pick like a time period for Queen, if I was going to go see Queen, you wouldn't hear, my set list would not have, Fat Bottom Girls, Ride My Bicycle,
right.
We Will Rock You. None of that stuff would be, I wouldn't want to hear that. That those songs I would have thrown away, but they're huge hits.
Right.
And that was not, to me, that wasn't what it seemed like Queen wanted to be when they first came out. When I saw them, they were just ripping it up, those first three albums, and just, it was exciting. It was different. The production was different. And then all of a sudden it went to, I don't know what to call it, 1920s bubblegum kind of.
Yeah, it was like thing. This kind of over glam. It's kind of like,
I don't even think you can put glam on there. It was glommed. I never really understood it, but it was simple and it became huge. It was more popular. So I think putting that kind of stuff out there, you can make money and stuff, but if you're not committed to it or you're not into it, it would be kind of tough to play night after night. But and that's not to say that Queen themselves doesn't love every one of the songs that they put out. I'm just trying to make a comparison with a big group. And
right. But again, it's from a fan standpoint, though. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's me as a fan of Queen, you know, and what I prefer. So.
Oh, I mean, like, to be honest, like, if you asked me, like, right now, like, okay, Don, you're a Zebra fan, what would you love? I said, I'd love to see them play here in Atlanta and play the debut album start to finish. Do you know what I mean? Like, because, like, that is something in my mind, like, that I've always wanted to see Zebra do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm a fan, and that's like, not that I don't love your other material, but, like, there's something special about that.
Well,
and,
yeah,
you know,
and you know, and especially because, you know, it just shows, you know, the best material came out first. The second album had, you know, a lot of holdovers from the first record, and some of that was even like too different. You know, it was kind of, you know, there's a couple of songs on the second record that are just like, why we had to put them on because that's what we had. That was the best of what we had, you know.
Right.
And wouldn't have been my first choice, and that's why I worked so hard on the third record, you know. Didn't want to do that again. But when you're being asked to come out with album after album, year after year, it's a lot of work, and you just have to kind of go with what you got, so...
Well, so, because that's crazy, because, like, the discography of the band, I mean, you're talking, like, you know, like you said, like, the debut album hit in 83, No Telling Lies was 84, and then 3.5 was 86, you know?
Right.
But then 4 was, like, 2003, you know?
Yeah, well,
so,
you know, after the third record, Atlantic dropped us.
Right.
We didn't sell enough records. All the numbers came, and... you know, and I was still writing stuff, but it wasn't, the urgency wasn't there anymore.
Right.
We weren't having to do it. And I, you know, I got involved in doing other projects like you were talking about with the Key and different things. And, you know, and it was just a labor of love at that point to get the fourth album done, you know, so.
And the fourth album was so fantastic, and and one of the things that just struck me about it when I heard it, especially when it came out, was that it still sounded like Zebra, but like it wasn't a continuation from like 3.5. It was almost like you were missing like 5 albums. You know what I mean? Because it sounded very current, you know, like at the time.
It was definitely different than 3.5, and I think, you know, that's one thing about the band is that if you take each album, there may be a thread here and there between one to the other, but they're unique on their own, you know, as albums, and you know, musically and instrumentally and writing wise, I think, you know. So, you know, and knock on wood that our fans still enjoy the music. You know, we're still able to play. So.
Yeah, so like looking back on the catalog, you know, obviously, you know, with the 4 studio albums, which of course, like again, like I said, like I'm a freak fan. I've got the King Biscuit Flower Hour album and all that stuff, which I love, by the way. That's a great. I love, and the live album is fantastic, also. But like looking back on your catalog, is there one particular album or one particular moment from any of the albums where you look at and go, like, I wish I would have done something a little different?
Not one particular one. I mean, I could go back and critique everything and pick it apart. I mean, I was always really good at doing that and being anal about the mix and the production, but I don't know if there's one particular thing that irks me about any of the records where I go, oh my God, how could I have left that in there? You know, you know, they may not, not everything was as good as I would have wanted it, but nothing where I was cringing about it. You know,
right. Now, I mean, are there plans for another Zebra album?
Yeah, there have been plans for 17 years for the next Zebra album. And, you know, I've been writing, but as you grow older, your body slows down and the writing slows down. And I've got some songs, so, you know, maybe instead of an album, it'll be an EP, or maybe we'll release one song at a time as they come up, you know, and you know, but certainly I'd like to put some more out while we're still here, you know.
So one of the things, another thing I wanted to ask you too about was that like archival kind of stuff. Is that like, especially a band like Iron Maiden, I'm sure you're familiar with, they put out a ton of live material. Is there like a backlog of like live recordings of Zebra from over the years that you've looked back and go like, oh, that would be kind of cool to put that out from that specific tour?
Yeah, we have tons of that stuff, we have tons of that stuff, and it's it's a matter of time, going through it. And I've got some ideas for putting together some packages with some maybe some versions of some of the early covers that we used to do, for instance, that we didn't do for very long,
right.
Maybe some of the Rush. There's a lot of stuff that we've got recorded that might be cool to put out. So that's certainly a thought,
Yeah, because one of the things I've been noticing is a big trend lately is like reissues of albums, where people are putting out like a reissue of like their debut album, but then it'll be like like an extra CD of demos, or an extra CD of like a live show or something like that.
Right.
Because I always thought like, especially with the debut, I was like, that would be such a cool thing to see that repackaged in something like. So I was always curious if you thought like had considered doing stuff like that.
Well, we did put out the best of Zebra record, and that had instead of Who's Behind the Door from the first record, we put the demo version of it on there. I think we also did that with Take Your Fingers From My Hair. There were a couple of songs that we replaced the album version with the demos, and we added a couple of demos from the third record that went on that too. So we've done that, and there's more material we could do it with, so possible, we could put another one out like that.
I actually have the WRNO Rock album that they used to put those out every year, and I have the version that's got the demo of Who's Behind the Door on it.
Cool.
I bought it for that reason, and there was like I think that, which ironically we were talking about, that's got what is it? It's got Razor White on it, and it's got somebody else, a couple of other metal bands on it. So I said, when I see you, I'll have to bring it and show it to you, because I bought it because of that, But
awesome.
But speaking of. So you're hitting the road, and you've been doing some acoustic shows lately. So like you're kind of pun intended. You're like done hibernating. So like you're kind of out doing some acoustic shows. What can you tell me about Randy Jackson Acoustic? Because I've never seen you acoustic, and I'm super excited to see it.
Oh, okay. I started doing the acoustic shows about 20 years ago. And before that, I had put together a show with using a computer. I sequenced a bunch of stuff, and I called it the MIDI show.
I remember that. It was like the MIDI tour, where you had everything sequenced, like drums and things like that, where you just played along with it. Right.
Yeah. And I was able to control it with my feet and start and stop, and it was very cool. All lights were all programmed, synchronized exactly with the music, and I just remember the one day that the truck broke down, and couldn't get to the gig quick enough. So the promoter was saying, "Is there anything you can do? Can you just play acoustic or whatever?" So I played acoustic at that show, and then got involved with Lone Star doing the key. Which kind of took me off of playing live for a couple of years, and or playing as consistent as I was. And when I came back to start playing again, I kind of remembered what the comments I had gotten from people who had come to see the MIDI show, and a lot of them just didn't know what it was about. It was like a glorified karaoke more than anything else. I was playing along with my own songs, and and so it really wasn't about the work I put into it. It took me a year to program all the stuff, but it was more about what people were getting out of it. So I said, let me just do acoustic and just try to make it more than, than people are expecting without, having to record anything. So that's what I did, So I use a lot of open tunings in the acoustic show, and try to get as much sound out of the 12-string guitar as I can.
Right.
And it seems to have worked. I'm doing it, over 20 years now, and people like it. So, I do, pretty much any of the Zebra stuff, and plus, the stuff I grew up with, a lot of Led Zeppelin, Moody Blues, Beatles, and throw some of that stuff in there, and it works out good. It's all about the music, and I'm just glad people enjoy the show. It's it's very relaxing. I never have a set list. I just go up and play, so I can interact with the audience a little, on the fly, and not have to worry about sticking to the agenda.
Oh, that is so great, though. I mean, especially being like from an artist standpoint, for you who for so long has had to stick to kind of some sort of an agenda and whatnot. Like, to just be able to go out there and just say, I get to play what I want, and whatever. Is there a particular song that you ever just say like, I'm tired of playing this, or like I don't want to play this one, like?
There's certain songs that don't work on acoustic guitar, and sometimes I'll still play them. Like "Wait Until the Summer's Gone," for instance. A lot of people want to hear that. Sometimes they, as much of the Zeppelin as I do in the acoustic show, I do a lot of different Zeppelin songs. People ask me for stuff like "The Ocean," which is, it's not a complicated song, but on acoustic guitar, it's just kind of strange to play it, so I end up having to do octaves and stuff and do a lot more to make it work at all. And so, though, I would say like those two kind of songs are tough. There's certain songs with the acoustic that I just wouldn't do, but then there's a lot of songs people go, wow, I would never expect you to do it on acoustic, but I think it's more about them being wide open, orchestrated songs. Those are the ones that are that I like performing more, that have a lot of stuff in it that aren't so just, a riff or something. Kind
of like the La La song,
Yeah, La La song's good. Well, anything off the first record is not a problem to do acoustic,
Yeah.
I would think that if I had to pick a Zebra song that would be tough, like I said, "Wait Until the Summer's Gone," or if I was doing, say, "I Don't Care" from the second record, that would be tough.
I was about to say that's a pretty like riff heavy. You know what I mean? Like that's a little hard on that.
It's just kind of you just can't get any meat out of it with just one guitar, and so those are the kind of things, But most of the third album, is it's pretty easy to do. I mean, I wrote it all on acoustic guitar, so it translates pretty well.
What was it like for you when you heard Dream Theater do "Take Your Fingers from My Hair"? Because I obviously I'm a big metalhead. I grew up a metalhead. Prog metal is not necessarily my total thing, but I am a Dream Theater fan. But when I heard that version of that song, I was like, Randy Jackson must be losing his mind right now. Like, this is so cool. Like, I thought it was cool. But what did you think about it?
They did a great job. And, Mike Portnoy had contacted me to let me know that they had done it before I heard it. And, I was flattered. They're a great band and, great musicians. And it was very flattering that they did the song. I thought it was awesome. And they did an awesome job with it, too.
So, like, at that point in your musical life, to kind of hear from a band of that status, that like, or especially in this era, that they were Zebra fans and inspired by you, like, does that kind of keep?
Yeah, it makes you feel good.
Fire? Yeah,
it makes you feel good, and it's you just never know who you touch, and how much of an influence you have, but. It was certainly, like I said, I was flattered. Flattery, is kind of like, wow. You just don't know. So it's nice to know that. It's nice to hear that, and they did a great job, which makes it even better.
Oh yeah. Well, I am super excited about the acoustic tour and the acoustic show that's coming here to Atlanta. That's going to be Yeah, I'm like I said, I am stoked to see you there. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm going to be one of those dudes that's going to have 2 albums in my arms, ready for you to sign. You know what I mean?
All right, Don.
I'm super excited, and I'm so glad to have the chance to talk to you once again. And
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
No, I'm so glad you're doing it. I'm so glad you're still doing it, and just travel safe, and we'll see you here in Atlanta soon.
All right, Don. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Randy. All right.
Bye-bye.